But something happened back in May of 2009 where the zoning board kind of took it upon themselves to review what they classed as a minor variance for a company called Clayton Block, and it turned out to be a new major industrial use. They took a block company that had minimal amount of traffic and minimal amount of environmental impact, and they allowed them to expand their use to become a major cement distributor. And I noticed mornings when I go to work, I see a constant parade of cement trucks going up Belleville Turnpike at 6 o'clock and 5:30 in the morning. Some of the tours I've taken down there on Port Avenue, I've seen cement dust all over the place. This variance, this minor variance that was acted upon by the zoning board, was done with no traffic study being required of the applicant. It was also done with no environmental studies required of the applicant. And when Mr. Pierce inquired as to why this application was allowed to be processed, he's really received no logical, reasonable answer. And it almost seems like this whole process was probably one of the fastest steam trains I've ever seen, because I've been involved with the planning board for several years, and I know that the application process for any kind of a variance takes time. The application was submitted on April 30th, 2009, and hearing was heard by the zoning board May 13th, 13 days later, with a resolution that was written and passed that night. Now, Mr. Pierce, is that a normal procedure where a resolution is acted upon the same night as the hearing? Particularly when the resolution contains testimony that was given at that meeting?
As you know, Mr. Hughes, I was planning board attorney for 20 years from this borough, and I have never seen a resolution of this nature prepared in advance of a hearing. I've attempted to gain some insight into this issue with Mr. Sarlo. I have requested minutes of the meeting. I have requested a tape recording of the meeting. And I am shocked to tell you that there are no minutes of the meeting. There is no tape recording of the meeting. And the resolution that was approved on May 13th and published on May 16th was a very lengthy resolution which contained testimony as to what people testified to, what issues were addressed, the fact that no one appeared to oppose the application. So how it is that Mr. Antonicello, who is the chairman of the board, and Mr. Sarlo could have an application submitted on April 13th and approved on May 13th with a resolution prepared in advance without knowing what was going to happen at the hearing is extremely troubling to me.
That's it. One of the emails that I saw said that this may have been heard at a different date other than May 13th. Is it a matter of fact that it was in fact heard on the 5th, on May 13th?
Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor,
that have been heard in June?
Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, that's one of the most troubling parts about this situation, because I got that response from Mr. Sarlo. Mr. Wall has spent countless hours over the last several weeks tracking down Mr. Sarlo's explanations or attempted explanations for this situation, and attempted to indicate to Mr. Wall that maybe it's not on May 13th because maybe it took place in June. But as I just indicated, having pulled the file, the actual resolution that was passed allegedly on May 13th was published on May 16th. Confirmation of the resolution being approved on May 13th was published on May 16th. So for Mr. Sarlo, after being unable to satisfy my request to tell Mr. Wall to start looking elsewhere, since it wasn't on the tape recording sitting behind us, there were many other meetings during the same 2-week period by the mayor and council, by the planning board, etc., all of which were recorded properly. To tell Mr. Wall to start looking in June is totally contradicted by his own file and the fact that the resolution, which was pre-prepared, was published, as I said, on May 16th. So for him to give us this wild goose chase over the last week of looking in the June tape recordings leads me to a very unfavorable conclusion.
Now, my review of the resolution that was supposedly acted upon that night, and the resolution that was actually in the folder, didn't even have a vote tally. So there's no indication whether this resolution passed or not. There's no indication who introduced it, who seconded, and who voted on it. So my question is, with no minutes, no recording, no vote tally on a resolution, is it even a legal resolution? Does it constitute a legal meeting, or did they even have a meeting? I mean, there's too many things here that are unanswered. There's too many things that are just very strange in this whole thing. And somehow it just doesn't pass the smell test. You know, I work for the Board of Health, and the first indication that you had of food going bad was you smell it. If it smelled fresh, it was fresh. If it didn't smell fresh, it wasn't. It was turning bad. And this whole situation just seems to have, I don't know, it just makes no sense to me. And then somebody put me put me onto the fact that I know there's been a lot of comments going back and forth, a lot of bantering going back and forth about pay to play on this council and various things like that. And somebody referred me to the ELEC forms for the Democratic Party that year. And it turns out that a month before the application was submitted to the mayor and council, to the zoning board, there was a $1,000 donation made by Clayton Block to the Democratic Club. A month after the application was supposedly acted on, if it was acted on, another $3,000 was donated. And what's really troubling is the chairman of the zoning board is also the treasurer for the Democratic Club, and there's no indication in any of the resolution that he recused himself from this meeting or this action. And I'd like to call and ask now that all of the information that's been generated by Mr. Pierce and all of the emails that have been going back and forth, I'd like to have them all packaged up, and I'd like to have them forwarded to the U.S. Attorney or the State Attorney General for further review, because frankly this whole thing is troubling. There's too many things here that just don't make sense. There's too many things that don't make sense in any way. So I'd like to have this reviewed by an outside source, sir.
Okay.
I'd like to say something.
I think what we should do in this case is have the administrator and the borough attorney review all of the documentation, whatever's available, and make a determination as to how it should be reviewed. There are state agencies that can review this: the Inspector General, the SCI, the Attorney General. There is possibly the Department of Community Affairs, Local Finance Board, whatever the case would be. I've seen some of the emails, but again, I have not had an opportunity to take a look at any of the hard documentation that does exist. So, being that situation, we'll have the attorney confer with the borough administrator to determine what is the best venue to have this issue reviewed.
One other thing,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to have a review by our attorney as to whether this variance is even legal, because frankly this is a redevelopment zone. It's been a redevelopment zone since 1990. Industrial I-1 use has never been allowed or approved in the redevelopment zone. That is the type of variance that was granted. It was a major use variance. My understanding is the way a major use variance can be done in a redevelopment zone, and Mr. Pierce can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it has to be done by ordinance, not by variance.
Well, the simple question I have, Mr. President, is can this be remedied by an ordinance? Can this action be rescinded by ordinance?
I don't know if it can be rescinded.
We can't pass an ordinance rescinding what the zoning board did. We may be able to have a court overturn it based upon the steps that were taken, the way it was handled, the lack of response that I've gotten. And by the way, before this meeting today, I'd sent Mr. Sarlo a letter asking him to meet with me before this meeting tonight so that I would have further clarification, and I have not received any acceptance of my desire to meet with him to discuss this issue. So the answer to your question is, Mr. Mayor, we can't pass an ordinance to change what was done, although if it was done improperly, and I can tell you, absent minutes, absent a tape recording, it is not a valid meeting. As to whether or not a court would find some argument in favor of Clayton Block of some sort of grandfather rights because it was a year ago, it would have to be left to the courts, but the court would have to overturn this.
Well, is that the appropriate action to take, to refer it to a court? To put the zoning board on notice and and advise Mr. Sarlo that does the council want to discuss this in executive session and then pass a resolution to take whatever action they deem appropriate?
I think the best thing to do is probably have Mr. Pierce to look at the possible gain and possible loss in pursuing that course of action. And then maybe at the next meeting get back to us with a report that we could discuss in closed session.
I think that would be the first step to take. Councilman?
This is a minor issue. Talking about the same subject, it's a minor issue. Ridge Road now has become a racetrack for cement trucks. I'm glad the chief is here tonight. I almost got hit by a cement truck.
Why is that a minor issue?
Well, you guys are talking about some heavy stuff, you know.
Oh.
I'll tell you the truth. You know, these cement trucks go out early in the morning, and they're running back and forth to get cement when they empty out to finish a job. They came flying through North Arlington today like you thought it was World War VI, man. They were flying down Ridge Road. And it was around 2:30 when kids were getting out of school. You got a lot of cement. I mean, we haven't noticed it because it's probably new, but you got a lot of cement trucks running through this town, and they're flying. They're going to pick up another load, go back to the job. And I just wanted to make that point because one passed me today doing about 50 miles an hour on Ridge Road. Easy 50.
What time was that?
Around 2:30. Give or take.
This afternoon?
Yes.
No, I'm
They
sure
almost
that
took the door off my
these
car.
violations occur in the presence of our police department.
And the key to this
They'll
whole
issue
thing
summons.
is, I didn't know this was going to come up tonight, and it came into my mind. It came into my mind, and with these cement trucks, because there was no traffic study done on what these trucks can do.
You know, the whole intention of the redevelopment plan was to get away from heavy industrial use. We didn't want that type of use in the Meadowlands because of the problems that have been created over the years with the pollution, the heavy trucking, and everything else. We wanted to get away from that. So back in 1990, 20 years ago, this borough decided we didn't want to go this way. Clayton Block was a non-conforming use, and what the zoning board allowed to happen was a major expansion of a non-conforming use with total disregard of the redevelopment plan. Even the redevelopment plan that was on the books a year ago did not have any provision for that type of use.
Counselor, are you prepared to submit a written report regarding this issue to the council?
Oh, I am. I have only received in the last couple of days additional pieces of this puzzle, including the realization that this meeting took place, if it took place, and I'm not convinced it took place at all. It clearly was not taped. It clearly was not the subject of minutes. It was, as I said, the resolution was drafted in advance, and I have stacks and stacks of documents, including some Google Maps that I was able to pull up, which I pulled up this week, showing the property before the application and the property today, and the size of the buildings that were placed on this property, and the size of the operation compared to what it was before this resolution. And to call this a minor variance and somehow outside of the scope of the redevelopment plan really turns logic on its head. And the fact that it was done in 13 days, Mr. Mayor, under these circumstances is very troubling. But I am prepared to put together an entire file on everything that was done. I already gave you an opinion letter last month.
Yes, I have your opinion letter.
Based upon the information I had at that time.
Okay.
I now have significantly more information, which I can put into a final report.
Well, I think that's the appropriate step to take at this point. Any further comment or discussion on it?